Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Wisnefski. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Hi, welcome to Manufacturing Talks. I'm Jim Wisnefski, your host, and we are sponsored by Cosgrove Content, wordsmiths for industry. So if you're in manufacturing and you struggle to find someone who can write about what it is you do, that's what Cosgrove Content's all about. So check it out, cosgrovecontent.com. And today we have a really interesting discussion talking about the nuttiness in the lumber world with Mike Wisnefski. He is co-founder and CEO of MaterialsXchange. Welcome, Mike.
Good morning, Jim. Thank you for having me on your show.
Glad to. Yeah, this one's an interesting one. You and I met for the Forbes article quite a while ago, and I know the world's gone a little nuts in your corner since then.
It is, it's so funny. I'm thinking about that. It was 2 years ago in late winter, just before COVID.
Yeah. The whole world's gone nuts, but I know when we get into the meat of what you do, you'll have some interesting stories about that particular nuttiness. And so your background is in trading, right?
Well, I started out in construction. My dad was a superintendent for a commercial construction company. I have a degree from University of Wisconsin, go Badgers, in construction management. And then after college, I figured out that construction wasn't as fun as I thought it would be. It was an interesting time. It was the late or early 90s, and we were coming out of a bit of a recession. And these contractors were at a stage where they didn't really like to work together. They were always fighting each other, right? So I was in construction for about a year and I left because it wasn't fun. And I was a young kid, right? I wanted to have fun with my job.
So you decided to go somewhere easy, like open pit floor trading.
Yeah, no. The first thing I did is I went into the lumber market world, which, it's in a trading world that people don't even think exists, don't even know about.
Yeah, no one who isn't close to it is aware, right?
Exactly. And I wasn't aware either. And you get into these industries and you end up learning about the whole ecosystem and supply chain around those industries, and it's really fascinating. So that's where the trading bug actually caught me, for sure. And there's no better place to learn economics than in a commodity product.
Yep.
It's every day the forces of supply and demand show themselves, and it's so interesting, and it's a game. Really, at the end of the day, it's a puzzle, a game. You got to figure out what the forces in the market are doing that day.
Yep.
And there's opportunity day in and day out. You don't know where it's going to be, but there's an opportunity for sure.
Yeah. And so I don't claim to know anything about it. What little I do know comes from actually the guy who unwittingly connected us, and that's Jeff Carter, who writes marvelously about his time on the trading floor.
Yeah, there's trading is I think people underestimate what's interesting. In the United States, we are this polite business environment where the seller puts their price out. Okay. And as a buyer, I can choose to take that price or don't. And then there's very little bartering going on. But most of the rest of the world, they barter like mad about everything.
Yeah.
I took a trip to India, and there is no such thing as sticker price in India. Mm-hmm. Everything is up for negotiation.
Yeah.
Which I like. Why not? Let's figure out what value means to me and value means to you, and if we come to common ground, we'll have a transaction.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so you actually created a marketplace that didn't exist then with MaterialsXchange, right?
Well, the marketplace has always existed. We're digitizing it.
Oh, okay.
And
yep.
I think that's a really important. That's an important distinction. Marketplaces have existed for 10,000 years. you look back in time and the bazaars and all of the cities would have their marketplaces and right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Trade routes. It's pretty amazing that this rock in the North Atlantic called Great Britain once dominated the world.
Right.
And why did they dominate the world? Because they were traders, and they controlled the money.
Yep.
If you watch where the money goes, and you will, see where the trade's going for sure.
Yeah. Well, and of course, everyone involved in making anything at all these days is getting a fresh new education on the ins and outs of the trading world.
Absolutely.
So I know that's certainly fed into some of the craziness you've dealt with. But tell me, so you knew something about the lumber world from your time in construction, obviously. You knew trading. So tell us how that kind of came together to have you create MaterialsXchange in your digital marketplace.
Well, it was actually frustrations in the late 90s with how the lumber market actually worked. And the way it worked then, and ironically, still a big portion of it today, is you would build a network of relationships. And it was inside of the relationship that there was communication. And it was inside of the communication that the data flowed. And if you talk to any economist, they're generally pretty nerdy and they don't do so well with relationships, right?
Yeah.
But what they do really well with is data. So kind of going back to what I said at the beginning, it's a game. And what you're really doing is collecting as much data as you can to build a thesis, build a model in your head or on paper, and you come up with a conclusion and you make a decision. You make an economic decision. And while it appears as though to be successful in that environment, you need the relationships, the reality is to be successful in the trading world, you need good data to make decisions off of.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the late 90s. It was just frustrating because you couldn't always get the best data. And, there were the games and people would be for you or against you and giving you good data, not giving you good data. I was just kind of done with it because I was in Chicago and you see the trading pits and the financial trading world where data flows so fast and free and you can make split decisions and if you're right or wrong. It seemed like a better place for me to apply my analytical mind. Yep. So I left the lumber world. And this was interesting. I was making, pretty good money as a lumber trader. I took a pay cut. I went to a third of what I was making and I became a clerk at this proprietary trading shop here in Chicago, run by a guy named Don Wilson, who Don is extremely successful today because he really jumped on the digital market. But that's where I stood side by side with him and I watched him trade options and I watched him trade futures. And I started to learn really how that whole, I use the term quite often, the second and third derivative. And on the surface, most people don't understand it, but it's like, okay, you analyze something and you see the first derivatives, you see what's in your, right in front of you. But then, okay, what's driving that? That becomes the second derivative. And then the third derivative drives the second derivative that drives the first derivative, right?
Yeah.
The true answers are always a few layers deep.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to watch him trade. So he was on the floor of the CME and he had clerks on phones talking to the CBOT and into the markets in Europe. And he could extract opportunities because it's an interconnected world, but the format or the platform, the environment where the prices were being discovered were in different locations and he would find discrepancies between them.
So using technology to his benefit that existed at the time, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. The telephone.
Yep. Which sounds, kind of archaic now, but that's what it was.
It was for sure. So then I left that firm actually because an opportunity came up for me to trade the European government bond market on their new digital platform. So
Mm-hmm.
we would listen. We had a phone or a squawk box, and there was a guy who would call out what was happening in the 10-year bond pit in Chicago. And we would use that information to trade the digital markets in Europe. And it was fast at the time.
Mm-hmm.
We had only a 1-second delay between when you click the mouse and your trade would go through. And that was blazing fast. Which is, in today's world, obviously that's not so fast.
Yeah.
So that's where I learned about this digital trading and how you can collect the data. So you fast forward to 2009, and this is where it all comes together. 2009, the CME announced they were going to put lumber futures on their digital trading platform, and they were looking for someone to help get that market going. So I struck a deal where they, gave me some incentives, and I walked into the lumber pit with a computer. So this is 2009.
Mm-hmm.
There were about 25 people standing in the pit, and they all had a pen in one hand and paper in the other. And in the style that was very similar to 2,000 years earlier in, the streets of Jerusalem where they would be trading, it was people standing around, talking, yelling, screaming, whatever you want to do,
Yep.
finding the market.
Yep.
So I had a computer in my hand, and I was able to arbitrage between that pit market and the computer. In fact, in the first 10 minutes I stood in the pit, I made $1,000.
Jeez.
Because, and it was literally free money. The guys in the pit refused to honor the digital market. Anyone could have done this.
Yeah.
But they said,
But you did.
We're not going to honor it. We're going to ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't look at you, you're not there. Within 18 months, 95% of the trading volume migrated to the computer.
Yeah.
So, why did that happen? Because it's easier. It's all about the easy button, right? And it allows for the digital environment, allows for quicker, better price discovery.
Yep.
Because there's better data. So that was the nirvana moment. And although I didn't really start working on the materials exchange model until about 6 years later, but that's where I learned firsthand what the digital market could do.
Yeah.
Now, if you think back 2009 to today, what other parts of our personal world have changed and went digital? The easy one is Amazon, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so many other aspects. You look at ride sharing. I remember the first time my wife and I took an Uber, and we actually took pictures of ourselves in the Uber and sent it to our friends. Aren't we crazy? We're riding in some stranger's car. And today it's ubiquitous, right?
Yeah. Yep.
It's actually, Uber has become a verb.
Right. Yeah.
So, it was those transitions in our personal lives. And so 2016, I started working on MaterialsXchange. And it's a, fully digital marketplace for buying and selling today. It's lumber for construction of houses, basically residential construction lumber, and wooden panels. But what's very exciting, we're moving into our next vertical here in about a month. We're going to start a marketplace for pallet parts.
Oh, okay.
It's the wood components that are that go into a pallet.
Yeah, that's interesting. It was actually one of my questions down the road was what other opportunities. So I definitely want to revisit that because it can't only be that as a possibility. But before we do that, when you and I talked a couple of years ago, you were at 10 mills and wholesalers that were users at the time. I'm guessing you've gotten well beyond that at this point. So tell me a little bit about the business growth since the Forbes article.
Yeah, we have about 400 users on the platform right now. Yesterday, there were 80 unique logins. So it's obviously growing.
Good. Yeah.
There's no doubt we've had our stumbles here and there with part of the technology. It's interesting. We've brought the technology that drives the platform. The birth of it was from the financial markets, and it looked like it was going to be a pretty easy transition into this marketplace. But we've had to make some tweaks that I didn't. Of course, you don't see some things coming down the road. We're definitely we're migrating more to an e-commerce model. While price discovery, which is what financial markets do really well, while it's important, this is a transaction, this is commerce, and there's expectations of the users of how commerce needs to work. So while financial markets can move really fast, they're linear. They do one thing and one thing really well fast, or really fast. The lumber market has more breadth, meaning that the number of products in it is wide. The number of players is wide. The geographic locations is wide, or are wide, I should say. So encompassing the breadth of the market has had us pivot a little bit more towards an e-commerce model. From a technology standpoint, which has been a pretty fun problem to solve. Building a business is a thankless job.
Yep.
It's your users or your stakeholders complain, I need this, I need this, I need this, and you deliver it to them. And a week later, okay, yeah, thank you. You might, I should say, you get a thank you day one, but a week later, that's their world then. And that's just the way things are moving forward.
Yeah. What are you going to do for me next? Right?
What are you going to do for me next? We actually, on Friday, we had a meeting with our CTO, and we were kind of planning out priorities of, what to build next. And we took a moment to look back on how far we had come in the last 6 months. And it was amazing. Wow, think about all these features and, performance improvements we've done. Yet it doesn't feel like we're anywhere close to the finish line yet.
Right. Yeah. A lot more to be done.
A lot more to be done.
Make sure I understand this. You started and you were trading commodities. And so that e-commerce now, is that trading specific lumber items then?
Yes. So, the MaterialsXchange platform, it's 2x4, 16 footers, truckloads of that, truckloads. And the smallest item that we transact is a full truckload. In today's world, it's $30,000. So, that's big commerce. We're not selling $10 books.
Right.
These are big transactions. And it amazes me how people throw around $30,000 trucks like nothing. Right. Go out and, I need 10 of those. All right.
Right.
There's 300,000, or how about this? I need 10 rail cars. Oh, wow. Okay. There's $1 million you just spent.
Although, you drive around, I know in my area here in Grand Rapids, it seems like there's a new subdivision going up about once a month, and think about the sheer amount of lumber that goes into those houses.
Oh, yeah.
That adds up pretty quick, right?
It does indeed. So, it's this commodity product that we need price discovery on, number one. But we also, this supply chain is really important. It needs to get distributed. It needs to get to Grand Rapids.
Right.
The lumber is not manufactured in Grand Rapids. So somehow we need to get it there. And then we need to get it out to this job site. And, you look at all the players involved. And this is where it's really the power of the digital market comes out, is the builder or the developer of that subdivision. They need to make an economic decision. Because once again, you're going back to big dollar items. You take 100 houses in a subdivision, and the average cost, let's say, is $500,000. All of a sudden, that is a $50 million decision that the developer's making. And they're not making that decision in a vacuum.
Right. Yeah.
They need to have good hard data, because they're going to go to someone to get the money to start that, right? And that someone they go to is going to be like, okay, well, why should I give you the money to start this? Do you know what the heck you're doing? Do you know what your material costs are going to be? And now you start, the chain, or the supply chain, where that data needs to flow. That person who at the bank who's going to loan the money to the developer needs to know what's the price of lumber. So now you can go, so the developer talks to the supplier, who talks to the wholesaler, who talks to the mill, and we all played the telephone game in our lives. Data through verbal communication gets pretty mucked up. And in a digital market, it doesn't.
Right.
It's just pure.
Well, and so, obviously you saw that opportunity a few years back. In a normally functioning world, and got it going. Now, I'm guessing that, like the rest of the world, like this Zoom call that we, thank goodness we had when the pandemic hit, otherwise God knows how we would have gotten our business done. How has the pandemic and all the craziness in the market affected you guys at MaterialsXchange and what you have going on?
So it's a blessing and a curse. The blessing is that everyone has the incentive to pull the sheet back and say, where are we deficient? What aren't we doing right? Because everything's kind of thrown into a turmoil. So it was discovered really quickly that the relationship business is a fragile business. As soon as that relationship goes away, you've lost your flow of data. You've lost your connectivity. And this showed itself in that these organizations that everyone sat in the same room and we could communicate over the desk. And while I might not be communicating directly with you, someone sitting next to us can hear, or you might hear this communication that I'm having, and you pull that data out and you can, move that business forward just because you're in the world and you're hearing this data. So, okay, everyone gets dispersed. And those conversations and those relationships kind of cease. And we go, wow, we need to do this in a better way. So people looked for Zoom calls and stuff like this, digital ways to communicate. So that's been the blessing, right? The curse is that when the unknown happens, people gravitate to what they know. So, starting something, I would never recommend starting a business in a pandemic. It for sure, it has its challenges. But the people that you do get to flip and come over and try, they're like, wow, this is great. There's several, I'm starting to think in my head right now, companies that have expanded their business solely through MaterialsXchange. And it's really cool to see that and to partner with those people. Now, there's other people out there who full on refuse to use the digital market. They are I don't need that. I don't want that. It is going to be very bad for me. When I say that, it's going to be bad for them personally. Because they've built this ecosystem. This is a quote. Actually, I could pull the email up from a large lumber chain. The person in charge of their procurement said, we have spent a lot of time and energy building the relationships and the team that does this for us. We have no interest in damaging that. And you're like, okay, well, guess what? I'm going to go damage it for you. So
exactly. That's where you get left behind.
Here's another one. There's a very large producer told me directly, we feel that your digital market is going to be very disruptive to our supply chain. I said, okay, yes, you're correct. So we're not ready to do that. Okay, got it. In last month, we sold to their customer's customer the same product that they make, brought in from Europe. In their backyard. So guess what? you're not going to get that business, Mr. Producer.
Yeah, you've been
Your
disrupted.
customer's not going to get that business.
Yeah.
Your customer's customer, by the way, is thrilled that they didn't have to talk to someone to talk to someone to talk to someone. They went on the platform and they're like, oh, perfect. I need this product. And they bought 10 truckloads of it.
Wow.
So, of course, I made sure that the producer knew that this happened in their backyard.
Yeah.
And while on the surface, it looks like I wanted to rub their face in it. I didn't. I'm like, this is what's going to happen. Like you can't stop technology. You can't stop the forces that are out there. I would much rather have had that local producer say things like that. Sometimes even they bother me because I like to look at the world as the most efficient, do things in the most efficient manner.
Yep.
You think it really makes sense for us to take trees out of Europe, put them on a boat, bring them across the United States, or bring them across the ocean to the United States when we've got perfectly fine trees sitting right here?
Exactly. Yeah.
No, of course I'd rather see that happen.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, I'm an entrepreneur and a capitalist. And if it makes more sense to do that, well, then we should do that. And, the forces of supply and demand will eventually balance themselves out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, you mentioned Amazon. That's a good example. No one wants to see the local bookstore go under. At the same time, they have to realize that there's this technological monster breathing down their necks.
Right. But let's talk about books. What were there before books? There were stone tablets, and there were people whose job it was to, carve into the stone tablet.
Right.
Do you think they were real happy about books coming along?
Right.
No, of course not. Like, I don't buy books anymore. Books are annoying. They're heavy.
It's funny you say that because I am literally surrounded by books right now because we got new carpet in our basement and had to empty our bookshelves. So I'm literally behind me are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of books. So yes, most of them are going to Kindle now.
I would say you're probably having a struggle right now.
Thank
what
goodness
should
I
do
have
with
two teenage sons.
No, but I'm saying internally, your struggle probably is, what should I do with these books?
Yeah,
absolutely. I've got boxes of books in my attic, and I can't bring it to myself to throw them away.
Yeah,
because they have a value in my brain, but the reality is they don't.
Right.
Anything I need to know, I can find out instantly.
Yeah.
It's not in those books.
Yeah.
Whatever's in that book is already digital.
Exactly. And so it's marched on whether we like it or not, right?
Yes. Yep. But I think there's an important distinction here, and that's that everything comes back to data.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that gets me really excited about what we're doing is we're connecting that pipeline between supply and demand, and allowing these technologies that are at supply and demand currently to operate better.
Yep. Right.
If you looked at the modern sawmill, they're fascinating how computers are running things. I was having a conversation with a sawmill owner, and he said, in the last 10 years, the machines basically are the same. It's the controls have all gone to a computer.
Yep.
It's the software, and what they can do with those machines now is remarkable.
Yeah.
And that's just in a 10-year time horizon.
Right.
And then where we're just scratching the surface is on the demand side and the construction side. And this is where we need to get better. We need to build houses in a more efficient way. We need to design them in a more efficient way. So why do we use 2x4s? That's because that's what they make.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, you're going to go build something out of Legos. All you have to build with are the Legos that are in the box. Some are a little longer, some are a little wider, some are a little narrower, but they're all square blocks.
Yep.
Why we build with 2x4s? Because that's what we make.
Yeah, that's what we have.
And they're figuring out better ways to build with 2x4s, but the next change is going to be, once we connect supply and demand digitally, demand is going to be able to say, hey, supply, I don't want a 2x4.
Right.
I want something that is 15 millimeters thick by, 48 millimeters wide for this application.
Well, and you think about like the roofing, the joists now, they're basically like wooden I-beams.
Sure.
Is a great example.
Well, and
make what you need, not just what's easy.
Engineered trusses.
Oh,
like
yeah.
How they can, take the marriage of wood and metal and put together into, a frame.
Right. Yep.
That two things, it's easier to construct and it's stronger and it's, performs better. But so the design aspect of those buildings uses computers. For the computers to design most efficiently, they need data.
Right.
And the computer doesn't need someone to talk to it. It needs a digital feed.
Yeah. Yep.
So, right now we connect up the supply and demand digitally, let data flow back and forth on price, on need, on what the product needs to look like. And we're going to move the world forward.
Yeah.
So that's what really gets me excited, actually.
And so along those lines, I know from going back to when you and I talked last, you had partnered with Raven Logistics on some rail transport. You mentioned earlier here, moving into the new vertical with pallet parts. What are those other either new opportunities from a business perspective or new partnerships that can help you move that direction you're talking about into the digital world?
I'm glad you brought that up. This is where you start to talk supply chain and moving the product from point A to point B. Well, we've always gone on this railroad into that facility and everybody knows each other, right? Okay, cool. But there's a better way to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe you should move your rail car into a different city or a different location. Maybe you should not use a rail car. Maybe you should use trucks. Maybe you shouldn't use trucks. Maybe you should use a rail car. So, right. Raven Logistics is a highly technologically advanced logistics company that knows rail to truck to, your job site. So now you incorporate their technology into a pricing platform like MaterialsXchange, and you are going to improve the entire supply chain. And what's happening that I'm seeing on the logistics side is this new visibility into where the product is at or where it's moving. And that's important stuff.
Yeah.
A piece of data that we're hearing more and more about is time for transport or time to completion. Time has become a very important component of the supply chain because it's important in price. It's important on where you're going to put things.
Yeah.
We've started to watch the speed of rail cars. Like the average speed of a rail car has actually gone down. As soon as you see that going down, you can understand, that maybe the supply is going to have a short-term constraint to it.
Get a bottleneck.
A little bit of bottle. And then all of a sudden you'll see, rail car traffic has gone up or the speed has gone up. The time to transport has gone down because the speeds have gone up.
Yeah.
It's a great partnership with Raven. We're actually starting partnerships with these digital truck brokerages. And what's really cool about there is getting that real-time pricing for trucks into the platform. It's the price to move something is just the price to move it. And you have to factor that in.
Yep.
Too many times people don't factor in the proper price for transport. And then guess what? They can't perform.
Yeah.
And, people always say, or, commenting, trucking's really tight right now. Well, cheap trucking's tight. I think Uber actually is one of the best examples in ride sharing of surge pricing.
Right.
It's really annoying. Like, you don't want to pay more, but it gives you the decision. Okay, I'm not going to pay more. I'll wait. And the surge price is going to pull in more drivers. And if you wait long enough, the surge pricing goes away. They just had a couple of years ago, now maybe 2 years ago, in Chicago, the train had a malfunction. And up by Wrigley Field, the train stopped. And there was this massive surge in pricing of Uber. And the city actually put in legislation that said Uber can't do more than 2x or something surge pricing. And all the traders downtown just laughed about it. They're like, you know how annoying it would be if you're standing there at the train, right? And you have to get downtown, and you need to be downtown. And the value of you getting downtown, let's say you're a trader and you needed to go down and get to the floor because you were going to make $10,000 standing on the floor that day. What would you be willing to pay to get downtown? Probably something close to $10,000, right? Now, if you were, working at one of the restaurants downtown and you were making an hourly wage, what did it matter for you to get downtown?
Right.
It might have mattered $15.
Yep.
So let the market decide who's going to pay up.
Oh yeah. Don't get me started on that. We'd have to go at least another couple hours.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm excited about supply chain, these changes in this visibility. There's great companies like Project 44 here in Chicago, and Forkites here in Chicago as well, where they're giving visibility. You can see these trucks moving down the highway on their interfaces. I have a vision where every truck, there's going to be one central computer system that knows where every truck is at, and we can make the whole shipping and the carrier fleet more efficient.
Yep.
What's so ridiculous is when two trucks that are empty cross each other going opposite directions to go pick up loads.
Yep.
If you had them all if you had them all in the same network, you would take out that inefficiency.
Yep.
It's like every time you make a gain in technology and improvement, it opens up an opportunity for another gain.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You learn what those next set of inefficiencies are.
Yeah.
So what's next for you guys? What are you guys at Materials Exchange looking at for the future?
So one of the things we've learned is that, okay, we built this platform, and all you have to do is show up and put your stuff on here, and it's put your materials on and price it, and you can come and buy and sell. The next level is, what can we do to make you digital in your work so it makes it easy for you to put your material onto the platform? So we're going to come up with, it's in the design right now, we'll call it the live lumber list. And it essentially, it becomes a real-time shareable digital document that your entire group can sell off of, where your inventory becomes live. So that, like, I'm blown away by some of these big organizations that on Monday morning, they send out their sales sheet or their inventory sheet, and it's a Word document or an Excel document, and it's static.
Yep.
By Wednesday, they're like, well, cross that one off.
Right.
So, what's next for us is actually helping people be more digital, because if we make organizations digital, they can connect onto us.
Yep. Yeah. And helps them to have everything in real time.
Exactly. Then after that, we're going to look at changing the time horizon for selling, meaning what the buyers need and what the real end buyer, like these developers, they need longer term guaranteed pricing. They need firm prices.
Yeah.
That I have a project that's going to go in 9 months. Well, it doesn't necessarily make sense for you to buy all that wood today and put it in a warehouse somewhere. but it would be really nice if you could lock that price in.
Right. Yep.
So, there's risks with that. So we're going to figure out a system to finance and mitigate those risks, but allow for, transactions to occur with a longer time shipment horizon.
Very cool.
So yeah, it's, you have to go to your users and your customers and your stakeholders and say, what's your pain point?
Yep.
And fix that pain point for them. That's
true the world over. And unfortunately, a lesson that too many are still trying to learn. So good for you realizing.
Well, if you don't, in the service world, which really we are a service company.
Right. Yeah.
If you don't, your customers are your product.
Right.
So if you're not helping them, you're not going to be successful.
Good deal. Very well said. Is there anything we haven't touched on that the listeners, the viewers should know?
I think we live in this, I don't want to go political, but we live in this 24-hour news cycle, and if it bleeds, it leads. And I think that too often we find ourselves pessimistic as a society.
Yep.
I am more optimistic right now than ever. I mean, the opportunities in front of us. And I think people our age kind of bash the millennials. They're an amazing group. They are, with the knowledge that they have on how to live in the world, the modern world, and communicate in the modern world is really incredible. And we need to embrace that.
Yep. I agree entirely.
I watch, my kids don't watch TV. They watch their phones and they other devices.
Yep.
And I'm always like, well, I like looking at the big TV, but he seems to like watching stuff on his phone.
Yeah.
But what my son's world is that he can bounce from boom, boom, boom to show to show, or to medium to medium. If you are running a business and it is cumbersome for your users to switch quickly, they're going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, you're already behind.
Right. So I think what we need to do is embrace the younger generation. Now, don't get me wrong; they've got some problems. They're working. I think their work.
We bring our wisdom to the table, right, Mike?
I think their work ethic is a little, something to be desired. Their expectations of how things just should work all the time are, maybe too high. But
more of that blessing and a curse kind of thing.
Or that blessing and curse. But I tell you what, they're not going anywhere, so we better figure out.
That's right.
So yeah, like I said, I'm very bullish on the world and bullish on technology.
Good.
What we've learned. Think about the amazing things that have come out of COVID. This Zoom call and just so many different better ways to do stuff. I'm not worried about inflation, by the way, because technology takes care of inflation. Inflation's a great thing. Like, follow the money.
Yeah.
If there's more money going into a scenario, there will be some creative people that will figure out how to solve that problem.
I think then, given that mindset, the next huge vertical for MaterialsXchange is healthcare.
Yeah. But you know what? Healthcare, the problem with healthcare is visibility.
That's a big part of it. Yeah.
And my sister actually is a physician, and one of her biggest complaints is that she will be in the room with a patient and laying out, here's several courses of treatment. And the question could be, well, what is that going to cost? She has no idea.
No idea. Yep.
Like, she's the provider and she has no idea what it will cost.
Yep.
So
that's another subject we could go for another couple hours.
Right. But what's important is visibility and data.
Yeah. Just like what you started with.
If it's all present, you can make a decision.
Yep. An informed decision.
An informed decision.
Yeah.
And, you know, the people talk about whatever fake news or slanted stuff. We need to, as humans, to take responsibility for our decisions.
Yeah.
And guess what? Just get more data.
Yep.
And figure out what's good data, what's bad data.
Yeah.
You know what? I actually love when people don't tell me the truth. And I know that source, because then I say, well, that's not the truth.
Yep.
I'm hearing it and I know it's wrong.
Yep.
But now I know it.
Yeah.
Right. It gets all factored in. And
Yep.
then you hear some data that you're like, oh, that is the truth. So now I can compare the not truth and the truth, and I can make a decision.
Right. Well
So,
said.
Anyway, it's a great world we live in. You know, Jim, I really appreciate the opportunity to expunge my words of wisdom on you.
It's good stuff.
I think the more you learn, the more you know you don't know.
Yeah.
One of my mentors was a really smart guy, and he basically said he gets dumber every day the more he learns.
I like that. Yep.
And it's so true. You know, the
Yes,
more you learn, the more you know. What I'm always worried about is what I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
So hey, you know, plenty. So if folks out there want to find Materials Exchange, where do they go?
MaterialsXchange.com. Actually, this is great. In today's world, if you can't find someone, really, you don't need to tell people, oh, you know, go to materialsexchange.com. Just Google Materials Exchange.
You would hope not, but again, you know, there's still those folks like you were talking about who aren't quite there yet. So right, but it always helps to tell people.
Now, I don't want to sound flippant, but if you are selling a digital product, don't worry about those people. They're never going to come on board.
Good point.
So look, if you can't find Materials Exchange, you're probably not going to use it.
You just cut a commercial.
That's so true.
All right, Mike. Thank you so much for your time. It's great.
No problem. Yeah, we'll talk again soon. I enjoy following your material. We're always looking at what you're putting out there. I think as far as journalists go, you take, in my opinion, the right approach. Let's.
Thank you.
You put out the raw truth and let people make a decision on it.
That's exactly what I try to do. I'm glad you appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks again.
All right, take care.
So long.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Wisnefski. Watch for new episodes dropping on the first and third Tuesdays of every month.